Some games are immortalized through their concise original design. Popular sports are the best example of this, I think. A game that doesn't have to intrinsically evolve or change original elements to stay interesting because of the great canvas it allows talented players to paint within. You can capture an audience and a player base strictly within the presentation of powerful or engaging competition within certain categories of sport. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a different strength, I think. Though certain retro formats like Edison in particular do hold this immortal quality to them that is driven by innovation within the deck building and gameplay, the overall appeal of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is its ever-evolving quality. The game is alive and moving, it changes at a rapid pace, and if you don't stay on top of bandlist changes, new cards released, and new tech being innovated, it's an incredibly easy thing to fall behind the other competition. It's an interesting thing to watch, the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Evolves. However, with evolution of any sort, as time goes on, certain qualities may be lost forever from the original subject. Today I want to discuss that, particularly the way the mechanic of trap cards and their application has evolved and disappeared from the metagame. Those of you who play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the modern day, I'm sure it's not really a surprise for me to tell you that the trap mechanic feels more than a bit outdated, at this point at least. There is very little use for cards in the genre outside of specifically crafted strategies dedicated to making trap cards function. Today, I'm looking to analyze the disappearance of the trap prevalence in Yu-Gi-Oh! And what it means for the game as a whole. I figure the best place to start is the very beginning, or at least close to it. Early playable formats of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like GOAT consist of a fair number of useful monsters, power spell cards, and a collection of the most powerful trap cards. For anyone who has spent a fair amount of time in this format, you know how important trap cards are. Tracking what your opponent has and hasn't used, and generally playing around the unknown set cards your opponent controls is key to effective GOAT format gameplay. By being able to properly read and play around the potential back row you're playing into gives you a sizable edge, not just in GOAT format, but in many early eras of Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a quality, in my personal opinion, that is attributed to the long time to kill paired with the prevalence of trap cards, while only small amounts of mass spell and trap removal were available in the game. You have to properly deal with the back row through your gameplay to efficiently out-advantage your opponent. Drawing certain outs won't save you when you need multiple turns to kill the opponent and there's only so many real answers to more than one set spell and trap card. I do think that this is where so many people drift away from the current game and gravitate to staying within this era of Yu-Gi-Oh! People are so dedicated to things like GOAT and Edison format in part due to the dynamic that is only really present when trap cards are in the forefront of the metagame, and the time to kill is extended past common OTKs. The presence of understood unknowns within set spell and trap cards is one of my favorite mechanics in a card game, period. It creates an interesting back and forth of working around variable interruption and gives the opportunity for powerful bluffs. It gives the older era of Yu-Gi-Oh! A very specific charm and dynamic that simply doesn't exist in the modern day, and it's a mechanic that I can truly appreciate. Through this lens, the two games of older and newer Yu-Gi-Oh! Are functionally entirely different in application. Not to say, of course, that one is better than the other, they are simply different experiences. So with the difference in gameplay understood that prevalent trap cards proved the game to have, we can now explore what exactly it was that changed from a game development standpoint that led us to the new age of Yu-Gi-Oh! That we play today. The Shining Darkness, I think, was the true defining moment for Yu-Gi-Oh!'s diversion from this slow-paced, trap-focused gameplay, at least in my opinion. The introduction of Infernity and decks like it prompted a very real need for the game to introduce different types of answers. If a deck was going to be allowed to set up consistently a board on the first turn of the game, there needed to be a level of counterplay available outside of exactly DD Crow. Reactionary trap cards wouldn't be able to efficiently act as defensive measures for a player going second, with the game speeding up as it was. Thus, Konami introduced defensive measures like Effect Veiler and Max C, hand traps that functioned in a similar regard to trap cards but allowed for defensive play on the first turn of the game. This game design choice was not a change that occurred overnight. The power creep that led to the disappearance of trap cards as it stands today originated with Infernity, but it was not an immediate doomsday situation for the mechanic. trap cards maintained irrelevance for quite a while after the game began moving toward a quicker time to kill. But again and again, as Konami introduced faster archetypes and more hand trap-esque measures like Ghost Ogre and eventually Ash Blossom, it was clear that the trap mechanic was falling out of favor. The dynamic that existed within the slow, chess-like back and forth of Goat or Edison faded as the game took on a more aggressive form. The more a player could do on the first turn of the game, the worse a trap card was to play in the main deck. This has led to the sad reality of current trap cards. To be able to make an argument to play the mechanic in this day and age, you have to make the cards so absurdly powerful that they are worth the turn 1 barrier to entry not present in cards like hand traps. Nowadays, unless a trap card is searchable in combo or functions as a literal hand trap, it has to have some sort of floodgate application to be strong enough to find relevance. Pair this fact with the mass back row removal now available to players that had been illegal in various periods of the game's history, and there are very few reasons to play with trap cards in the modern age of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not to say, obviously, that the modern age of Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't have many good attributes and interesting elements, of course. The newer age has brought a lot of interesting things that you could never have previously done. The game has a lot now that it didn't have at the peak of trap card application. But I do think that the previous era will be remembered fondly, immortalized within the older formats that players will continue to play for years to come. The era of trap cards held a great amount of interesting back and forth gameplay, and a truly methodical and interesting experience in general. Tell me what you think though. How do you feel about the move Yu-Gi-Oh! Made away from trap cards toward the modern style of the game? Do you prefer one? I found a lot of enjoyment on both ends, so it's always interesting for me to see where people land on the spectrum of opinion when it comes to this topic. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Also, just want to quickly thank everybody who made it to the end of the video. I know that I took a brief break from the game, so I haven't really been writing or uploading much to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! But I do hope to be back now, making and writing some more stuff for you guys in the coming months. I really appreciate any and all the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.